All right.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Brooks McDonald Podcast. We're thankful if this is your first time here. Welcome. We also just appreciate the folks that stay with us, and our topics can be all over the place. And today, we're going to spend some time talking more based around a video, Tyler, that you had seen and sent to me, and kind of just sent us off on an idea of conversation today. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a friend of mine sent it to me, and he does intentional marriage retreats. My wife and I got to do it earlier in the year, and it was wonderful. And we were talking with him and spending time with him, and he goes, I saw this video recently, kind of wrecked me, just about how we do church and how we need more intentional relationships and discipleship and just being with people. And the church today doesn't do that as well. So he sends me this video and I watch it, and man, it's called Godspeed. And it's about this pastor that just finished seminary. And, he's talking to a friend and said, what's next? What do we do? And the guy said, well, if you really want to know what ministry is about, you might have to go farther away from home than you think. And he ends up in Scotland in this tiny little village and learns what it is to actually be with the people and just knock on the doors and spend time listening to people, being with them. And the whole thing is about, the story of Jesus and where he lived. It was not a huge, big city. It was a tiny village, and he walked around. Yeah. And he spent time with the people, and he was there all the time. And it was really interesting because one person in particular came to know the Lord when he realized that Jesus was in this tiny village. There's no way he could have BS'd his way through this stuff, because people in a small village, they talk, they know each other. There's community there. If he was a shyster, if he was lying, if he was, faking these miracles, the people would have known it. But he had credibility enough so that people were following him like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just, the whole thing is about slowing down to the pace of coming to know people intimately, instead of just this quick, fast, bite size, hey, how you doing? Great, move on. But really slowing down to know people and taking it. For this pastor, it was about there was a part in there about taking away from the Sunday. The Sunday didn't matter. The pastor's like, did you spend time with the people? He's like, no, I was preparing the service. And he goes, they don't need you on Sunday. They need you on Monday.
Yeah.
And Tuesday. Yeah. And Wednesday.
Yeah, I remember in the video where he shows up to Scotland, he's like, hey, where's your office? Where's my office?
Yes.
And he's like, they called it the parish, which in that sect or group, the parish is just the neighborhood where all the members of the church live.
Yeah,
that's
the
their
community.
Parish, the community, right. And so he said the parish or the community is your office.
Yeah, he turned him around and just showed him there's like one street down the whole town. And he goes,
that's where it is.
There you go. Start walking.
Yeah, start walking.
Start walking. And he's like, what do you mean start walking? He said, start walking.
Yeah.
That's what he did. And he started knocking on doors.
Yeah, and listening.
Yes, that was a big thing. And there was a whole point in there of, you'd be amazed how many people just have no one to listen to, that they can talk with, that will listen to them.
No one will listen to them.
Yes.
Yeah. No one to talk to, no one to communicate with. And it's weird in a culture. I've seen two comedians that come to mind. One, his name's Sebastian. I can't remember his last name, but he's a really animated guy. And he was talking about how growing up, the doorbell ring, they grew up and come on in, let's get you some sangha. You want some sangha? We got some sangha for you. And, come and have a seat and let's talk. He's like, nowadays the doorbell rings like, oh my God, someone's at the door. Everybody get down, get down. What are they doing? What could they be at my door for? Or this other one was talking about Californians moving to Texas.
I just saw that, the Babylon Bee thing. That is hilarious.
Well, this one, Joe Rogan's.
I'm your neighbor.
Joe Rogan shared the video.
Oh, he did?
If this is the same one, it was a Texas guy with the. He was like, "Hey, I want to say, oh God, call the cops, call the cops."
Like, whoa, I'm just your neighbor. I'm just going to say hi.
Yeah. He goes, "You got a gun." We all have guns. Like, oh my God, let's go back to California with a few other people. But also, I'm the son of a politician and have knocked a lot of doors in my lifetime asking for the vote for my father. And you think how quickly I feel that's changed. Like the only people we get ringing our doorbell is delivering a package. It's UPS or Amazon or FedEx. And how sad that is.
Yeah,
you
we've
know?
all like built these walls to like stay away.
Yeah. And I think uniquely though, position where we're at in Florida, especially like the resort I'm in, there's a little more interaction because there's just a lot of outdoor activity. There's people, you may not see them inside, but people are outside their house a lot of times. And there is a lot more front porch living, people walking around. And so you get to know your neighbors a little bit more, even though you're not knocking. But even so, me and Tyler live in this same neighborhood. I'm about to finish building in the neighborhood where he's at. And we're on the HOA board together also. And even just, I needed to know what someone's opinion was, and I didn't have their phone number, and I didn't want to Instagram them to get a hold of them. So I just finally, I'm just going to go, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go knock on the door.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock.
Yeah.
And so I knocked on the door, and we had like a 20-minute conversation. It was great just to spend time together, even besides getting clarity on their opinion of a conversation, just being able to see their house and talk to them more. And
Yeah.
that in and of itself, just for humanity, so underrated. And I think, from a segue from watching that video, and what that video pointed out was Christianity, the churches that we work within or serve within, and then even our neighborhoods and individuals, it's about disconnecting human interaction. So even on church, a lot of it's, you come to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
It's about the presentation of that sermon. And even someone pointed out, like, people are fickle enough to be like, you know what, I'm going to go to this other campus because that pastor is really hitting my soul a little more than this pastor. And it's like, man, the depth of relationship that you should have within your church that you're going to should be so far past what the last 3 weeks sermons hit was. It would be a disabling thought to leave, because you're leaving all these people that you know and love as your community. And the church we're at, I think, does a pretty good job of encouraging and forming small groups.
Yes,
and small
they do.
groups being that connection.
It is a very big church, and at our level, if you don't have small groups, then the function
Hard
of the
to be
church is just
connected.
the organization. I mean, it really does nothing past that.
Yeah. So what I took away from that video, which I don't remember in your kind of synopsis, so if I'm repeating it, I apologize. But when it said Godspeed, it said that the human walks at an average speed of 3 miles per hour. And so the moving speed of Jesus with his followers was probably 3 miles an hour. And it's hard to, it was a great reminder to get us to come back down to out of this 100 mile an hour society that we live in, of whether it be driving in a car or the speed at which you have to get stuff done. And to say, how are you going to get to know people if you're not just walking alongside them or being in that community, being rooted? And even so, in that Scotland, right?
I think so.
In that community within Scotland or Ireland, which one of the two, they were interviewing so many of the inhabitants, and it was like their 5th generation there. Especially that's old world.
The thing I found so cool is they don't have they don't have like numbers for their homes. Their homes
Right.
actually have names.
Right.
And he said it took them a while to like figure out the name of the home and the name of the people living in the home
Or two different names.
But because there's so much history of people and families that the homes have names, they don't have street addresses, and they don't have like numbers and things like that. And one of the things that struck me too is when he first got there, he kind of went to the local pub, and he was, talking with the guy that was running it. And he said, "Can you tell me a little bit more about the city and about the people?" And the guy in the pub just started going down the list of all the farms and all the people. And he said, I realized at a point he had memorized it. Like
it wasn't from a list.
Intimately knew everybody in town, every family, who they were, who they married, where they went. Like there was such a tight knit knowledge of everybody in town, and they all took care of each other. And I loved what they said in the film, but it said sometimes we need to slow down to catch up to God.
Man, that's so good. Yeah. I mean, that is so solid of a reference. And I think of small town America, it's probably where you most reference, where I know they know their dad, know their cousins, know where they came from. Unfortunately, I don't have a positive reference like this video to typically small town, because it's usually, my thought process goes to gossipy, opinionated, sharing everybody's mess.
Yeah.
But there's a balance there of your heart and where you are in loving the people around you. And it would also hit me like, man, transparently, I've been married 17 years. I've lived in 8 different houses in 17 years of marriage. Now that's extreme compared to the average person, but it reminds me there's a lot of the houses that I lived in that I didn't really know some of the neighbors within 5 houses of me. There's some I knew them, but I never got together with them. This one actually that we're at is probably the closest that we've been, where tonight we have a block party going on and we're all getting together and we bring potluck to the center of the street and we eat and share and love on each other. But a little soapbox moment would be that if the church is going to get out of its own way and start reaching the lost, it's going to be done exactly the way that video presents it. It's not done by preaching to someone from a pulpit in the church. It is in a loving, walking relationship next to them through their hurts, through their hangups, through all the problems that they've had, and walking next to them in that process. And
because I thought about family, we were talking about, some of the gossipiness and everything. I mean, you think about how close knit your family is and how much you see all the flaws and everything. And that's really the core thing of the video. It's nobody wants to be known anymore.
yeah,
And
there
how
you
do
go.
it's scary to be known to the point where everyone sees the flaws, all the hurt, all the other stuff, but it's so important to be known. And it's so I think we all yearn for it. That's why why we have a lot of depression problems. Another thing is because everyone's kind of barred themselves off and they feel like they have relationships, but nobody actually feels understood and
Yeah.
feels known. And the church is in such a position that they could do this, what they're supposed to be doing. And it is sad sometimes that we focus too much on the organization of the church and the Sunday morning and the other things, which can be great. They can be a wonderful message and outreach and other things. But when it becomes the focus to the point where there's no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday fellowship, discipleship, we're not actually getting to know people.
Right.
We're not, and those things can happen in small groups and they can be really good. Our church is a good example of that. Our small groups they're incredible. Like the ones I've been to they can be really, really good.
And the people that I see really good at it, I'll give an example because I went to one last night. Give a shout out to my buddy Andrew Bennett that goes to church with us. And Andrew's ridiculously good at getting to know people. And I mean, from a point where he will go knock doors from a business perspective, whatever. He just doesn't care. He's going to get to know you and he's going to love on you and pour into you. And so I went to his 35th birthday last night in his neighborhood. And what was cool about it wasn't all just church people that live all over the place. About half the people that came were the neighbors right around him. And the reason why the neighbors came around him because Andrew knows them and Andrew pours into him and Andrew loves on them and walks beside them. And it wasn't people that they also went to church there. No, they were neighbors. That was the relationship. And that was the time where they were just pouring into each other. And we need more Andrews that are out and getting to know the community around you. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge that I'd lay out today in this is, have you checked on your neighbors lately? Have you poured into, here's a unique story for me is one of the 8 houses that we were in, or 9 houses, was the house my wife grew up in. So that's pretty interesting. Her parents had sold and moved away, and then the people that bought it from them fell into hard times and the bank took it back. And we were driving around one day and I saw this house, their house on the market. I'm like, what? And I look it up and it's bank owned for sale. And so through a quick negotiation over a couple months with the bank, I was able to secure the house. I got it at half the price my in-laws had sold it 4 years before that, and started doing some upkeep. What was really unique about that is quite a few of the neighbors in the whole cove were the same ones when she was little. And so we were able to pour back into, we knew intimately every single person in the neighborhood,
That's
super
cool.
close. And that's what you long for. And I mean, what I took away personally, selfishly, is maybe I need to stay planted somewhere for a longer period of time. My parents would amen that if you could hear them, and they wish that was closer to home. But now that I have one that's in 7th grade and I remember my high school formative years of having friends and being in one place. We're trying to be intentional to be one place settled. We're kind of nomadic and we love to travel, love to experience places. A lot of them were bank owned properties that I was flipping, much like a builder would do, but just wanting to plant roots. And
as I get older, it just sounds nicer and nicer to me to do those type of things.
it also sounds nicer to have more land where you don't have any neighbors. There's
Yeah. But so I'm really, to be transparent, I'm really bad about this. Like I would be the worst person in missions field. Like I don't do well knocking on doors. I don't do well just conversing. I'm not the center of attention when I go into a room. I can enjoy time one-on-one, but I have a hard time meeting with people. I was just at a conference this week. I had like 400 people there. And it's hard for me to just walk around and schmooze. But even for me, of trying to go, okay, how can I apply some of these things into my life where I'm going, let me just take a second and slow down. And even if it's over text, ask somebody and mean it. How are you doing? And ask follow-up questions and really try to break down this surface level. Okay, great. Have a great day. Yeah. But I did that with Tucker this morning and just asking how his family's doing, how his kids doing. And, those are things I don't really know the guy, but I'm trying to find those ways where I can take a minute, slow down, be present, and just talk with people a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even though that's really not my forte, I guess.
Yep. And you'll find in some ways, we're at a place in society that is a little bit like that video. And that video is kind of spoofed off of left wing, right wing in states, but there's still a piece of like, there's a neighbor that I know of that said, don't knock on my door. Like, you don't roll up on me like that.
Yeah.
Type of a thing. And so you got to get to know the individual, but you may be met with apprehension. It may just not be open door all the time. Come on in. But it may be done over a period of time because they need to know you. They need to know who you are. They need to know your intentions. Unfortunately, the media has done a fantastic job of brainwashing the people to think if someone knocks on your door, it's typically bad intentions or someone's out to take advantage of you. They're still in a fear-based society from COVID, but it's time to get out and pour into your neighbors.
I remember when you said that there was a point in the video where it was kind of like a monk-looking guy, but he said,
"Oh yeah,"
he said, if you see you got a neighbor here and you can't get within 6 miles of him without him basically trying to kill you, and then 6 years down the road you can get within 600 feet of him, and then you can get within 6 feet of him." And he goes, but what his whole point was really interesting to go, if you can see in a small community how God has taken him from 6 miles to 6 feet, you can start to see how God is working in everybody's life around. Whereas if we're all going really quick and we're not really seeing what's going on, it's so easy to forget and see what God's actually doing in people's lives and how he's working in today.
Well, in the time element, though, also what I heard him say in that was, this isn't a quick fix. Souls aren't. He didn't say that, I don't think, but I just think of the idea of souls aren't a quick fix. It's a time, and a lot of times they want to know how much you care before they care how much you know, and it's just loving on people to see your imperfections, to know exactly where your heart is and where you're based at before they really want to talk to you. They need to know you. I was getting my hair cut actually, randomly enough, talking similar about the subject, and she was saying how she was having trouble socially at times. She seemed like it came on too strong at times, and people would kind of get turned off because right when she walked in the room, she wasn't scared to just, well, hey, how are you? Let's be friends. And someone was explaining that maybe when you're in that social setting with them and them just visibly seeing you in that same setting as them, even though you're not talking, is actually a comfort level to build respect and rapport to where they open up and let down walls. I think there's a balance to that. I think we should do more of just walking up to people and saying hello, because I think you can build up they don't want to talk to me. I've been around them 5 times. They never say anything. Maybe they don't want to talk to me. That could be the counter to that argument that I just made. But
when you show your own vulnerability, I think it makes it easier for other people to show theirs. Like, you don't have to necessarily pull it out of them. You can just lay your own stuff down. It doesn't have to be like you just met this person, you're dumping on them, but you can show like you're genuine. And if they really ask, how are you doing? Tell them how you're doing. If you're having a bad day, it might be impactful for them to say, I'm really having a bad day. This is kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
XYZ, and they might be like, wow, I never
Yeah.
had anybody actually be honest with me with that thing, and they may be able to begin to share something.
Carrie Beth had a scenario earlier this week out walking in the neighborhood and had a conversation with the neighbor, and that ended with another neighbor walking up and them all praying over one of the neighbors for a prayer request they had, laying hands and praying in the middle of the street. That's what life's about, is being able to lean on people and to pour into people. But even, you got to get out and talk to people. And some of that is like my challenge, and it may be geared specifically at what you said, but what you said is a lot of people. So I'll lay the challenge out, is where they'll say, that's just not me. That's not my personality. I don't do that. Well, is it really? Or are you labeling yourself that? If you're telling yourself you're not going to be it, then you never will. But it may be harder for you. But just like you said, a lot of people will stop there. Well, that's just not me. Well, no, I think there is some ways you probably can improve, like you said, about texting people and making it a point. Maybe it looks a little bit different than other people, but it has to be about pouring into people. I want, man, I'm going to sound like Rascal Flatts. I miss Mayberry. Like, just thinking about these moments, like I miss where you're relating to people and pouring into folks and loving on your neighbor, to where when births happen, when deaths happen, when birthdays happen, and it's your neighbors that are the first people there to greet each other and love on people. I think I have a very special pocket right now where I'm at, where that is pretty true in a lot of ways, but that's not for the most of America. And I want your community to be that place to where something's different. And maybe you're the difference maker. There's a glue in the community that has to start it. And why don't you be that glue? We're so good at waiting on other people, waiting on the government to fix our problems, waiting on the doctor to tell us how to do that, instead of taking responsibility, stepping up to the plate and taking it in our own hands. Say, how can I be the hands and feet of Jesus to the people around me? And that has to be done by getting out in the streets and loving on people, not preaching to people, not preaching at people, walking next to them in their way of life, hearing people who have had really hard flaws, or maybe things that are very counter to what you grew up with, but listening with love and pouring love into them, not preaching to them, pouring love into people and walking alongside them. So awesome time today. Awesome discussion, Tyler. Thanks for the idea of that video and sharing it.
And I'm going to link, it's a Vimeo thing, but I'm going to link it at the bottom. Good. Please go watch it. It's about half an hour long.
It's worth the watch.
But do it. And then make sure you get through the credits. There's an epilogue where he comes back to the States and applies a lot of the things he learned in Scotland for 10 years, 15 years. I don't know how long he was there. It was a long time, and applies it to his own church in the West.
It made me want to move there in a way.
Really.
But see, there's my vagabond self, my nomadic side. I have a place already. So thank you for being here. Please let us know feedback. Thank you for the shares, to share with other people if you enjoyed what you saw. Chat with you soon. Thanks.